Go over to Ruby now. Ruby,
Okay, these
I am
are,
going to mute everybody, and then you'll have to unmute yourself, all right?
all right, these are the kind of,
Now you need to unmute yourself.
all right, these are the bats and balls that we're talking about. You have to find somebody who can throw a really fast ball and you catch it with the bat. So I'll apologize for the intro to the video. It's I didn't set it up, but anyway, we'll go there now.
Okay.
Okay, so I need to put that in the background. Put that in the background.
You want to have your video up and ready to play before you
I
do
had
share
it up
screen.
already. Okay, here it is.
Can you turn your volume up? Or are you fast forwarding?
Definitely something wrong with the audio there, Ruby.
Yeah, we're not hearing anything, Ruby.
Um,
Maybe you can
Had
just
it working the
explain
other
as we
day.
go.
yeah, we had it working the other day. Okay, maybe this will work. It says it's at 100%.
Yeah, but your share screen's not picking up the audio is what the problem is.
Okay. Can you
Oh,
overdub it
okay,
then as you're playing?
let's try this.
No,
Nope.
it still says it's muted on your screen. It's an X next to the speaker.
Okay, try this now.
Looks like your picture froze.
It's not going to happen for a
There we
little
go.
bit, I'm afraid.
There we go.
What we're going to do today is something a little more difficult than usual, geared more towards an intermediate or an advanced turner. We're going to make this bat, and it managed to catch a fastball halfway through it. So this is what is called an off-center turning, and it's a spindle spindle turning. So we're going to follow the rules for spindle turning. Basically, this ball is just a bead, so you turn from the top to the lower parts, and the same thing going downhill on the bat. Now, if you're a total beginner, I'd say don't try this. Try making just the bat by itself, and try making a sphere for the ball. And once you feel comfortable doing those, then you could go, you know the process, you'll know the process, you could go ahead and try something like this. Now before you approach this project, you want to give it a little bit of thought. And what I do, lay it out first on paper to determine what size I want to make it. Now you see these red lines that are on here. This one goes through the center of the sphere, and this one goes through the center of the bat. Both of them meet at the bottom of the bat. And so we're only using the two centers over here for turning the two parts. Okay? Now I don't usually do this, but I laid it out in magic marker on the wood. And that's mostly so it would be visible to you. The red lines indicate where our centers are, and you can see here where I've marked the center. I've come at right angles down on the wood and found the center of the piece. And on this end, here's the center for the bat, and here's the center for the ball. Now, by doing this, you can also calculate what size piece of wood you want. You'll be able to tell the length of the
Ruby,
wood
can you
by
move your
adding
mouse up off
maybe
the video
half an inch
controls?
to 3/4 of an inch on each end of the bat.
Can't hear you, Dan.
And
Move your mouse up off the video controls up
I
to the
know
top
the
left.
widest part of the bat coming out to the widest part in this case is about 2 3/4 inches, so I gave myself an extra inch, okay, just for the purposes of turning. Now the thickest part of this is the bat itself at 2 inches, so I only needed this much wood here, and I gave myself a little bit of wiggle room on there as well. So just because this end is this wide doesn't mean it has to be that thick. So that'll help you with finding a piece of wood and conserving what wood you have. Okay, we're going to mount this in the lathe. I've put in a drive center and a live center here, and I'm going to put the center for the bottom of the bat here, and I'm going to bring this up to where the center of the bat is here again. Because what I want to do is just waste a little bit of wood first to get this roughed out. Okay? Okay, so you bring up the tool rest, lock everything down. Before you even think about turning on the lathe, you spin it by hand to make sure that nothing's going to hit. Okay, I turn the speed of the lathe right down, make sure it's in forward. Put your face shield on, and I'm going to use my Sorby spindle roughing gouge. So I turn the lathe on. I turn it up until I've got some vibration happening, then I back off the speed a little bit. Okay, the tool I'm using is the Sorby roughing gouge. This is never, ever, ever used on a boiler. I rest the tool on the tool rest. Notice that the handle is down low near where my pocket would be. I bring it in and begin my cut. Up close to where the ball is, so you can use your beading parting tool for this. Keep the handle down low, anchor it on the tool rest, bring it into the cut, wiggle it to give yourself a little turn. Now, if if you don't own a beading parting tool, but you do own one of these square scrapers, such as Greg Killian makes, okay, one of these square scrapers, you can use this. Now, the one thing I want to warn you about is that when you get to this end, you don't want to go past this line. Otherwise, we may take out where the center for this, for the sphere is. So what you want to do is make sure you leave about an inch up here, because we don't want to take out where our center point for our sphere is. Otherwise, we're going to have trouble turning that part. Alright, so it's all clear. Okay, so we've got kind of a wild pattern going on here. Okay, these fuzzy parts are starting to bother me, so I'm just going to clean them up a little bit using my bowl gouge, and I'm just going to come in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change centers to the center for the sphere. So I let it come down. You don't change the tail center at all. It stays exactly the way it was. Okay, having moved that, you notice how it's just hitting the tool rest. So you have to make sure you move the tool rest so that it's out of the way. Always spin it first before you commence. Okay. Now I'm just putting this off here. Now all I want to do is come down to where the center of the sphere is. And I think I stop and check. Okay. You can see where already we've come in on to where the bat is. And I'm just touching the top of the sphere here, so now I need to make it round. So I'll go a little further. Okay, we're almost at round. Okay, now I can come in a little more on each side. here on being round, so I'll come in a little bit further. Okay, we now have a diameter for our ball. Okay, this is where we have to be careful because we have to come in now and start making these cuts. It's better if your sphere, your ball is actually narrower than a full sphere. So what I want to do is with pencil, just give myself a line as to where the center is. Okay. And I'm going to start to turn into it just a little bit. Now, I'm just using a half-inch spindle gouge. So you start with the flute and the bevel's just touching, and you roll the tool into the cut. Okay? Now, I'm going to use my skew come in on an angle cut. What you want to do when you come in on that cut is make sure that this side of the bevel is pointing exactly in the direction of the cut you want. So on this side, I want the cut going in this way. And that can be a rough cut, so hold on tight. Okay, now I can refine my sphere a little more. And you have to look at the top of the sphere in order to see the shape that you're forming. So I can see that on this I need to come in here. Okay. So you can see that it's come along quite well. What I'm going to do now is change back and do a little more, refine the bat a little more, and then I'll come back and work on this joint between the sphere and the bat. I've gone back to the center for the bat, and before I turn I want to spin it a little bit and just make sure that I've got everything where I want it to be, and that it's clear of the tool rest. Now I want to take off a little bit here. And as I'm going, I'm checking because I don't want to go too low. That's one thing I like about this tool. You can angle it just like a skew and actually make a cut like a skew. Okay, you can see where it's come in now a little bit on the sphere, but that's okay. I'm going to take this down a little further because I've got to get the bat to round. Okay, so I'll start right here. Okay. Not quite. Okay, that's now round. Now, someone may ask, well, why don't you finish the bat all the way up to here? If I were to do that, what I would end up with is this very narrow area down here. And I want a little more stability down there since I'm turning all this just between centers. Okay? Okay, now on the other side of the spear, now, obviously I'm turning with a green piece of wood. Normally I turn these bats with only with dry hardwood. However, dry hardwood this thickness was not available for this demo. These bats came really nicely out of poplar, maple. Okay, so having defined that part, I'm going to go back now to the center for the spear and try and turn it into the back. Okay, this part is probably the hardest part you have to cut. Okay, that I'll clean up a little later. Still a little more to go on both sides. Now let's see. I'm going to try my bowl gouge and see if I can get a nice clean cut coming in. And I'm going to try my bowl gouge, see. I want to make sure this bevel is pointing in on an angle. Get a tight grip. Okay, refine it with my screw. Okay. I turn the tool to engage the cut. Okay, one more cut with my bowl gouge. actually, this is a fairly clean joint. I'm not too worried about the fact that this is not rounded all the way in yet. I can make a couple cuts and try and correct that. Okay. Recently I had to make 2 of these bats, and both of them were going to be used as gifts for Little League coaches. Now that's kind of a messed up cut there, but it's really hard to try and come straight in. I will try it with a banana and see if I can't get in that little cut right there. So I know where to go in. I'm just going to make a pencil line here so I have a better idea. I have a feeling that's just going to have to be sanded out in there. If you've never used a bidan, they work really well because they're half of a skew, so they can get into slightly tighter corners. I'll try again with the skew. Okay, so there's not much of the ball holding on here, so we want to go over to this part. Whoa, it's not the way to make this skew cut. Kind of hard to pick which tool is going to get into that area the best. Okay, this area I think I can take off when I go back to the bat. I just want to round this a little more. So you find when you turn yours, dry wood turns easier than this does. Okay, one more cup with the scoop. And try and keep it where it's supposed to be. Okay, I think that would be okay. At this point, maybe a smaller finger down. Okay, at this point, any sanding you want to do on the ball, you would do it this time. This little mark I wouldn't worry about whatsoever. You can sand that out later. Okay. The hardest thing is to make this cut in here, so we may have to come back to this angle again later. Alright, so I'm going to change it out now back to the bat. Actually, I thought this maple was a little harder than it is, and it appears to be a fairly soft maple. So it's not cutting quite as clean as I'd like. Okay. Alright, I think I can live with this. I mean, it's just going to take some sanding to fix up these areas in here, so I can go ahead and take this part off now. You can use the spindle roughing gouge if you wanted for this part. And what I'm looking at is the top here. Give me an idea if I'm fairly straight. Okay, now you can see where I'm cutting in here, but I'm not cutting here. That's because the wood itself is moved, okay? A lot of that I can sand in later. But what I want to look at is the transition from here coming into here. So this, I don't want to come in too much there. I wonder if I let this out a little bit, if that'll help. So there. some discrepancy here that I can sand out. Okay, so I'll worry about coming down here and shaping the rest of the bat. Okay, so the end of the bat has a bead basically here that comes into kind of a cove. So we need to form the bead, leave room to cut it off, and transition it into the side of the bat. I'm going to use the beading parting tool. So when you use the beading parting tool, start with it flat up, and then you just basically roll it into the cut. You have to be careful that you don't go too fast. And you also have 4 other edges, so if I want to use one of those edges, pick one that's straight, and do a scraping cut with it, you can. Okay. But I find this will give you can get yourself some very nice round beads with it. Now you can use the skew. If you want, this entire part you can do with the roughing tool. You want to come above the wood and down on the bevel. And as soon as it starts to cut, you come into it. Okay, I'll just quickly show you what causes a catch with a skew. When you're working with the skew, I'm going to turn this down to real slow speed. That's a little slow. So you rest it on the tool rest, you let the bevel rub, you slowly bring it up, and as soon as it starts to cut, you just continue the cut. Now, where people get screwed up is instead of just continuing when it starts to cut, okay, so here you can see it's just cutting, okay, they get greedy and they lift the tool up on its edge and they come off the bevel and you can see for yourself what it's doing. So there's a fine line, I'll do it at regular speed, not the catch part, preferably, as to how far you let it cut. So it's not cutting, it starts to cut, and I keep it at that point on my tool rest, coming down. If I try to take a deeper cut, I'm going to screw myself up. If I want to come down here more, start at this end, and each time you come back a little further, and then you create your taper. See, it's almost like working with plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Blend these two in a little bit. Okay. Okay. Now, normally I get it a lot smoother than that coming along here. Part of it is because the wood is moving so much, but we'll try and take this out. I think I'll use this. Okay. Now I'm not going to worry about that part. I can hand sand that off. Now normally what I would be doing is I would be hand sanding the entire bat. Okay. Okay, so we'll take this down just a hair further. So there you have it. Like I said, these will clean up. So basically, there you have your bat halfway through your wall.
You have your ball halfway through the bat.
Your bat halfway through
Do you
the
want to say that again?
All right. Okay, so basically, there you have your ball halfway through your bat. A minute ago, I said it wrong. We had to retake this part.
It's going in.
I'm glad someone else said
Okay,
that
so you
before
get
me.
the basic idea of how it's turned off center. If you worked with a really hard, dry piece of wood, you wouldn't have quite the problem that I had with it bending and going off center. Once you get the ball part done, then you would do all of the hand sanding. Then when you go back to the bat, at this point, that's when you would sand all of this. Most of this I'll leave and I'll sand it later. To clean up these little cuts in here, generally it's pretty hard not to get some movement. So what I do is I go in later with a file and sandpaper, and you can sand those little ridges right out and blend them right in. Now, somebody once asked me, well, aren't you going to put any finish on it? At this point, no, I wouldn't. And the reason is that the ball itself, I paint white. Okay, so here you have it. And if I put finish on it, I don't want to get any finish on the ball, because then the paint won't take to it really well. And the other thing is I want to make sure I get finish in here. Okay, and if I have the finish in here, then when I'm painting the bat, if I screw up and I get some paint over here, I can wipe it off with a damp cloth or a wet brush quite easily. Okay? Now when you go to make the lines for the stitching on the ball, those actually form a circle. Okay, I use a circle template, and you can kind of guesstimate which of these will work. And just draw on half of a circle here, turn the bat 180 degrees, use the same circle, put the template back on, draw half a circle there, And you can see these two areas here. Just bring them down so that you have a circle continues here. And the same thing, basically, I didn't quite center that real well. If you have an indexing position on your lathe, that makes it even easier. Okay, so you get the idea of how to draw the lines on. And then from there, it's just with red paint, make little V's all the way along. And you just continue in that direction until it comes back and it meets here. Okay, and that's basically all there is to it. Okay, to take this off the lathe, what I would do is take it over to a bandsaw, and I have a V-block cut, and I lay it in the V-block, and I would just nip off the two ends square. Most of the baseball bats and that I've looked at, they're all square there anyway. Now the water just from the force of turning is starting to come outward on this, so it's going to be a little while before this is dry enough that I could finish sanding it and paint it. However, it gives you the idea of what to do and what kind of problems you can run into. Don't use wet wood. This was the first time I ever tried it with wet wood, so I definitely won't be using it in the future. Okay, once you've mastered making these, and you've got the idea of turning on two axes, and you have a much bigger lathe, otherwise you'll have to scale it down, you can then go to this bat, my worm bat, and just like the other bat, this one is turned on two axes. One axis goes along the handle of the bat out this way. The second axis goes through the top half of the bat. And you leave kind of a bulky area here in the center. And then what you do basically is you carve these areas. Okay? Because you'll have little pieces coming out here where you mount your centers. All right? So it just gives you another challenge, another direction to look in. Okay? If you have any questions, I'm live during this session, and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. And thank you for inviting me and watching the demo. I hope you learned something.
All right. What a demo, Ruby. All right, folks, if you have any questions, now's your opportunity to ask Ruby on the processes and what she was doing there. Floor is open.
Does anyone have
Can't
any
hear you, Dane.
questions they'd like to ask?
You know what, Ruby? I understand why you went from, okay, you did some of the bat, and then you went to the ball, then you went back to the bat. I understand now, because you understood where the bat was going to be with the ball. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Um, I what I always did was the ball first, and then I did the bat to it, but I wasn't able to get that kind of detail.
Yeah,
I
whatever you do, don't use green wood. That was probably trying to cut those V cuts. That was the roughest I've ever had to cut on any piece of wood, I'll be honest with you.
you made a difference by showing to do both at the same time.
Okay, good.
That made a lot of sense. Really cool.
Very
too.
good. Thank you.
The wet wood makes
Really
the
enjoyed
demo
it.
fun, Ruby. You only use that stuff in demos.
Yeah. Now, Scott, you made a comment about don't turn a badan on its side like it is dangerous. Actually, turning the badan on its side like that and rolling it into the cut, yeah, is exactly the same as making a bead roll with a 3/8 beading parting tool. It honestly, it is not dangerous.
It is if you have
And
a tapered badan. Not all badans are square. Some are tapered, and if you turn the taper like that, you're gonna catch the corner of that tool, and it's gonna bite you.
well, all
Because
of
I've
mine
done
are,
it. That's how I know that.
all of mine are square, so I guess I'm okay.
Yeah, but you didn't say that it was square. You have to signify that that was a square badan, because not all badans are square.
Well,
Got
I
to keep
thought
the
you
cut in
could.
the middle of the. Got to keep the cut in the middle, Scott.
Yeah. Hey,
Right,
thanks,
I
Ruby. That
agree.
was a very good demo.
But
I didn't,
if
I
that
don't even
badan
know
is
what the,
tapered, you can't keep that cut in the middle
what,
when you
I'm
lay it on
sorry,
its side.
I've never seen a tapered badan
Well, I'll
because
get one
I
and show
learned
it to
how
you.
to use a badan when I was in France.
what
And
is the badan? What is the badan? What are you guys talking about?
the badan has the bottom is flat, and then the cutting edge goes up on one side only, and then it's flat again. And you sharpen the bevel edge, and you use it upside down with the bevel up.
I have one in my hand right now if you want to see it.
Okay, can you highlight him?
Hello. I
Who
can do
was that?
that's
Oh,
me, Scott. But
Hey, Scott, how you doing?
this is a tapered badan. As you can see the taper.
Turn it sideways.
You can see it's
No, no,
straight on it. You can see the taper. But this is a badan right here. So you can see it's got the
Yeah, see, the badan that I used has significantly more angle, and it's not tapered. I use the European badan, and I can't speak to yours.
this is a Sorby. This is a Sorby badan.
So if somebody wants to highlight me, I'll show you mine, because mine's more tapered than Scott's.
there you go.
Yeah, yeah, my taper is almost 45 degrees.
There, there's
Turn it side,
there's
turn it.
mine
Okay,
Slow down, slow down, slow. Bring it
down.
down.
right there.
Turn it.
That,
Yeah, and see, yours is tapered,
Okay.
whereas
yeah, mine
none
mine
of
goes
mine are.
mine goes from 3/8 to 3/16 on the top.
Yeah, mine is 3/8 all the way through.
If I turn this on its side, I guarantee you it's going to catch, because I've done it by accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gerald is correct that I'm using a French badan. The English badans are the tapered ones. So, are there any other questions?
No, hey, Ruby, that was really good.
Well,
Ruby,
hopefully,
Very good.
Ruby, I'm going to jump in. That was a great demo. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Don't you be blaming the English on the badan. The word badan is French.
you're
What we
right.
do,
It is. It
we
is.
we take a French word and a French tool. We make a new tool. We still call it the French tool, and we market it, and people buy it. He is completely right, and a lot of the badans that are sold in the UK, if half of the turners know what a badan is, are chamfered at the end. They have a bevel at the bottom edge, rather than the traditional French badan that is flat-sided, totally flat. It went straight in down to the bottom of the box. And I only know this because of Ashley Isles, because I went to him with a tool and I said, I want you to make something like this. And he said, that looks like the old fashioned badan that I used to make in the 70s. Nobody's ever asked for one of them. And I said, well, then I don't need it. And it stayed exactly where it was. But yeah, I can see both arguments there. I can see both sides. And certainly, I can't say that it would be dangerous because I've never used one. So I'm going to take Scott's word on that.
Yeah.
But I can jump in and say about the two different badans. But the badan is definitely French. You know, it's kind of, well, beef bourguignon. It's either a beef bourguignon or it's a stew.
Right. Well, when you sharpen a badan, you put the bevel edge against your stone and sharpen it. But before you use it, you have to take a slip stone and on the top edge, away from the bevel, like if this is the bevel, then on this side, you have to take the burr off. If
Mhm.
you leave the burr on, it's going to catch.
Yeah.
And that's another part to it. But if you've ever used a 3/8 beading parting tool for forming beads,
Yeah.
the badan works exactly the same way.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see Scott's wouldn't work that way.
You're right, and that's because of the taper.
Yeah.
And I apologize for the quality of the filming and the angles and that if they're different than what you're used to. What happened was I don't do videos as a rule, and Rob Summerlin happened to come over and he said, we need to film you doing something. And all of the filming he did by hand, holding a handheld camera. And so I have to give him credit because he did a pretty good job for using a single camera by himself.
This whole evening was very enjoyable.
Well, great. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Al.
It was very enjoyable.
Good demo, Ruby.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed it too.
I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I have the same badan you do, Ruby. So I'm thinking, okay, I can follow you. I'm like, yay.
If I had to pick one tool out of all my tools, that tool would be that tool and the 3/8 beading parting tool would be my favorite tools because you can do so much. You can use them as a parting tool. You can use them like a skew. You can use them to form beads.
I agree. I agree. I have many tools, but it's only because I want to, because they're really fun to buy and play with.
Yeah. Well, I was
That's
I was
I feel the same way.
I was just going to jump in there and say I did a video saying to people, just because you've seen somebody using a tool, it does not mean that you can use it. Do not all go looking for French badans.
no, you're
I'm
not
sure
going to find them.
Tool.
Well, it looks like to me you
Yeah.
have different gouges, and they're all ground different by different people. And the same thing will go for Badan.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's a
we
good
already know we can make these badans because they sell the tool steel on Amazon because we've been there with Scott.
Yeah.
Oh, great,
Well, there's
Matt.
certainly Matt. There's certainly not a lot to the badans. There's not a
No,
lot of
it's just a
sharpening
square
or
piece of
anything.
tool steel. Square piece of tool steel ground at the right angle. So yeah. And I'm with Ruby. I'm with Ruby in that my beading and parting tool. I didn't know it was called a beading and parting tool. I just knew it as my parting tool. It was the first one I ever had, and I still use it today. And it's one of my favorite tools because it's so versatile. I'm with Ruby on that too. So and a lot, you can use a badan in a lot the same way. So it's just, it's a good solid wide tool, and you can do that with it. So yeah.
Matt, what is the dimension on your square to the bar? Is it like 1/2 inch, 3/8?
Oh, I don't know.
3/8 works the best.
Mm.
Yeah, what Ruby says.
It gives you some stability.
3/8?
Yep.
Yeah, 3/8 by 3/8. And I have mine ground on about a 45-degree angle.
Me too.
Okay, what determines the angle of the ball to the bat?
Center's got to be within the bat, right?
Right, the center has to be within the bat. So like at the very start of the video, if you looked at the diagram that I drew on the wood, I drew the ball so that at least half of it is still inside the bat. If you make it outside, you're going to have it come apart on you. And if you do want to draw it out on the wood first so that you can draw where your center lines are for the ball and the axes for the bat.
Good question.
Yes. And when you do this one, the wood bat, okay, you have this axis going through here. And what I did was I had a square piece come out here so that my tail center went in right here. And then for doing this piece, this part with the axes this way, the wood came out and it went to here so that I had my tail center coming in here so that I could turn this half. And then it was just carve this center part to create the middle.
That's so cool, Ruby.
It's so cool.
It really is.
Ruby, you
Really
need to
is.
demonstrate
good.
that one.
That is so good.
The problem is they take a while to do the carving part on that.
I think you did a good job. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you.
Very good.
They are a lot of fun to do, but definitely whatever you do, don't use a wet piece of wood. Cutting the V's on the side of the ball, coming in here, making these cuts is extremely difficult on that wet wood because the whole thing was moving all the time. Whereas a dry piece of wood, you can make your cuts and you can get a nice clean cut on both sides. And that gives you a close-up. Ooh. Maybe if I turn this light out. Nope, that didn't work either. Okay, you can see the little V's that I painted on the lines in order to create the seams for the ball.
Yes.
Okay?
My goodness. Very
Good. Beautiful.
enjoyable evening, Ruby. Very enjoyable.
Well, good. If I inspire one or two people, then it was successful. Now, as far as the angle of the bat to the ball, that's entirely up to you, Roger. You can make it 90 degrees, you can make it a 45. Okay. I think if you have the 45 though, let me grab one of these. More of a 45 coming in here. This one's almost straight and that one's more of a 45. I think it looks more like it's pushed its way through the bat.
Like the bat was made of silly putty or something.
Right. Okay.
Very cool.
And that's it, folks.
Thanks,
That's
Ruby.
all.
Okay,
That's great.
one
Very
quick
nice.
question, Ruby.
Great,
One
Ruby.
quick question.
Great.
Are
Go
there
ahead,
any
Chief.
instructions on the web as for dimensions and that? I have two grandsons that I would like to maybe make one for their coaches because they're really good, even though my grandsons aren't, but the coaches are great. Can I go
Yeah.
on the web anywhere and get dimensions for this?
What I did was literally I just took some brown paper and I drew a picture of both the size bat that I wanted.
Okay.
I drew the bat and then I took that circle jig that you saw and I figured out where I wanted to put the circle against the bat. And I
Okay.
drew that and figured out where the center of that circle was, and then drew my lines so I knew where the centers were for the bat and the ball.
Oh, perfect.
So you could make a bat this big,
Oh,
or you could make one that big, you know.
yeah. I'm thinking, mid-range, 20, maybe 24. But thank you, Ruby. I really enjoyed this. I truly, this was
Well,
great.
great. I'm glad to hear that.